Welcome to the Third Win channel. Today we're going to be talking about the second episode of the new iCarly Reboot. We did a video yesterday talking about the first, or the pilot episode, and I recommend you check out that video first. Lastly, a spoiler warning. Pause this video if you have not seen the second episode yet. Now, let's get into the video. The episode is called I Hate Carly, and the episode synopsis reads, Carly finds it refreshing to date a guy who's never seen her show, until she discovers his big secret. Meanwhile, when Spencer accidentally blinds himself with pepper spray, he enlists Freddy to be his guide dog, in quotation marks. Intriguing, right? Let's talk briefly about the events that happen in this episode. The episode starts with a conversation between Freddy and Carly after wrapping up a web show or video, which is when Freddy notices Carly's hater is back. I hate Carly 57. Leaving another unpleasant comment, Carly has had enough, and she decides to confront the hater. And she notices that the profile picture of the hater has the Space Needle in Seattle in it. She suspects that the hater lives in Seattle, and we are introduced as well in this scene to the ick, which Harper explains is a natural instinct that disqualifies a date. In the next scene, we see the iCarly gang at Skybucks, where they told the hater to come, and it also happens to be Harper's workplace. Spencer is armed with a taser and pepper spray, and before long, he gets a reason to use them as they spot Nora, the Nora, the psycho. Conclusions are drawn, and Spencer tases himself while trying to tase Nora. Nora and the gang talk, and Freddy hides behind Carly, surely an intentional throwback. The confrontation causes a ruckus, and the gang are asked to leave, especially after Spencer pepper sprays himself. Lol. Carly decides to buy something so that she can stay, but she happens to buy the last muffin which a guy, Justin, behind her wanted. They end up talking, and they have good chemistry, and they arrange a date. But alarm bells are going off for the audience. We're all thinking this must be Hater 57, and it is. The next scene is especially exciting for fans of the original series. We see a murder board with iCarly's top suspects, which are Miss Briggs, Neville, Nora, Lubert, Millicent, and the braiding channel mentioned earlier in this episode. Would have been funny if Chuck or Chip were also included. As a fan, Hater57 also posts a nice comment about Carly's channel after they met. Carly then goes on a date with Justin, which the audience knows is Mr. 57, and the date is kind of ruined by Nora being there, surely stalking at this point. They return to Carly's apartment shortly after, where, long story short, they figure out that Justin is Mr. 57, as his phone goes off every time Millicent likes one of his old hate comments. Justin explains that he used to be a hater, but he changed his mind after meeting Carly, but Carly dismisses him. In the meantime, our subplot is Spencer, now temporarily blind, getting help from Freddy, but after a while, we figure out that Spencer has regained his vision and is just using Freddy, but mostly to spend time together. It ends with Spencer losing Freddy's trust, and Spencer's date, whom he met at the hospital, rejects him after he forgets her name, which was Sarah, I think. The episode closes with Carly forgiving Justin and finally giving him the spotlight on iCarly, and he recites some strange poetry which gives Carly the ick. So I don't think we'll be seeing any more of Justin, similarly to Luke from last episode. I thought I'd mention that I thought this episode was actually pretty great. Better than the pilot, in my opinion. Next, what did we learn about the characters in this episode? First up, Carly Shay. Carly continues to work on her restarted channel, stating that she wants to inspire, but yes, she also cares about how many people are watching and what they're saying. This is surely linked to her self-esteem issues we discussed in the pilot review. We also see her surprised that someone does not know her, asking ironically, have you ever been on the internet before? So she must be quite famous in the iCarly world. We also get to learn that Carly is 26 and likes HBO dramas, which she showcases through her murder board. Quite impressive, I must say. We also see that Carly is still quite forgiving, a trait she probably learned by being friends with Sam. Next, Freddy Benson. Freddy is glad to be back at the iCarly show and suggests that they can make a real impact now that they're adults. We learn that Freddy deals with the people he does not like on social media by blocking or reporting, avoiding confrontation as usual. Additionally, we learn that Freddy's failed startup company was funded by Spencer, and therefore he feels indebted to him and helps him, but is very angry when lied to. Which leads me to Spencer Shay. Spencer is back with his antics and funny lines, and I particularly liked when he called the pepper spray Senor Pepper Spray. We learn that Spencer also likes to spend time with Freddy, and is still actively dating, no girlfriend or wife. Spencer is also still very protective of Carly, being armed when she meets one of her haters. Next up, Harper. Harper continues to be someone who supports Carly. We get to see her workplace and her previously mentioned apron that she decorated herself. She teaches Carly and Freddy about the ick, and she seems to be quite explorative in the bedroom, scaring off a date with a bunny suit. And lastly, for our main characters, Millicent. Millicent is a fan of Carly's hater, as she enjoys his hate comments. She also joins the iCarly gang for most activities. It will be interesting to see if we see a school in the show, like does she go to school? She also knows capoeira, a Brazilian traditional dance and martial art. I feel that I should quickly mention Nora too. She's definitely not in prison anymore, and she still lives with her parents, as well as being a fan of iCarly. She also tries to imitate a violin with her voice. It's not good. Now that we've talked about the plot and the characters in this episode, let's talk about some other mentions and Easter eggs. We still have no idea where Gibby might be. I hope they tell us soon. However, we get plenty of throwbacks on Carly's murder board, giving credit to the existence of many old iCarly characters which I mentioned previously. As a fan, I thought this was awesome. The hallway in the Bushwell building is also changed. I do miss the old one, but this one does seem more fitting, but the 8D plate still stands on Freddy's place. Lastly, we get to learn that iCarly was basically the only web show back in the day and received thousands of submissions, and Carly would sift through all the quote-unquote cute guys. Finally, let's get into analysis and takeaways. One thing that is clear to me in this episode is that Spencer is lonely, and still very much enjoys the company of the iCarly gang the most. This is evidenced by his want to spend time with Freddy. Speaking of Freddy, as I mentioned earlier, trust is something that he values deeply. So when Spencer breaks his trust in this episode, he is angry. This makes sense as, since he's been divorced twice, there might have been some trust issues in his past. Sam, from the original show, also repeatedly broke his trust by revealing that he had never kissed anyone live on iCarly. Next, what are Nora's intentions? Did she know iCarly was going to be at Skybucks? Will she keep stalking them? We'll just have to find out. And lastly, I want to mention that this episode, as I mentioned previously, was much better than the pilot. It felt more naturally paced, the jokes were funnier, and it reminded me more of the original show. I also like the premise of dealing with your haters and the barrier of how people act online versus in person. But for this episode, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out our other iCarly content, including our review for episode 1. Expect more of these episode reviews, so subscribe. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.